Welcome to today's Military and Aerospace Electronics online panel discussion, Navigating the New Cyber Battlefield, Building Resilient Defense Systems Amid Evolving Threats and Regulations, sponsored by Critical Software in Portugal. I'm John Keller, Chief Editor of Military and Aerospace Electronics. Cybersecurity in the defense sector is entering a new phase, one defined by AI-enabled attacks, deep supply chain exposure, and rapidly evolving regulatory demands. Programs must defend against sophisticated intrusion techniques while preparing for new requirements under the EU Cyber Resilient Act, the US Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, and other global standards that are reshaping the definition of system trustworthiness. Experts today will outline what organizations need to know to stay ahead of the threat landscape and remain compliant. Speakers will examine how adversaries are exploiting new attack surfaces, how regulatory changes will impact defense programs, and how tools like software bills of materials, continuous vulnerability modeling, and secure by design engineering can strengthen mission assurance. Our panelists today are Jose Costa, Chief Information Security Officer at Critical Software, Doug Britton, Chief Strategy Officer and Director at RunSafe Security in Huntsville, Alabama, and Stefano Landucci, Head of Cybersecurity Engineering, Architecture, and Transformation at eForce in Trieste, Italy. If you have any technical difficulty during today's session, please submit it to the questions window and our technical experts will help you. We recommend disabling any pop-up blocking software or extensions in your browser, as these can cause issues with the webinar player. We welcome your questions during today's event, and we will answer as many as possible. Please feel free to send in your questions at any time by typing your questions into the Q&A tech support window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. To refer a colleague to today's discussion, share it on social media or access event resources and click the icons on the left side rail of your screen. Today's discussion is being recorded and will be available on the Military and Aerospace Electronics website within the next 24 hours. You'll be notified by email when the archive is available. So let's get started. The defense sector is facing an unprecedented convergence of digital transformation, sophisticated threats, and tightening regulation across the US and the EU. Jose, this collaboration brings together Critical Software, RunSafe, and leading defense players at a time when cybersecurity has become mission critical. From your perspective, what shared challenges or goals brought this group together, and what makes this partnership timely for the defense sector?
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the intro. Maybe let me start with some context. So defense systems are becoming more and more software defined and deeply interconnected. This brings a number of challenges, and just to highlight some of them, the expanding attack surface. So in the past, we used to have more self-contained systems. Now, with this interconnectivity, clouds, multiple third-party components, complex stacks, this, although it brings more capability and functionality, it really enlarges the attack surface and it represents a much larger exposure. We also see the acceleration of the threat sophistication. Supply chain and cloud are among the most exploited vectors. State-aligned bad actors start to blend espionage with monetization attacks, and the most popular thing right now, or trend, automation and AI. So what used to take a nation state now takes a small teams with GPUs. Another key challenge is the expectations around transparency and increased regulations, the regulatory expectations. So MODs, governments, primes, regulators continue to ask or start asking more what's inside software, right? And there we have challenges managing all of these components, ensure maintenance of all these components, ensure appropriate response times to vulnerabilities. So ultimately, why is an ecosystem of parties important with these challenges? So I believe these are too many or too big challenges for just one type of entity. I believe that it's important that we exchange knowledge and best practices in an ecosystem of different parties. And as we believe that a strong ecosystem is better than isolated solutions. Our role here of critical software, so we build high quality, high assurance, resilient mission critical software.
Okay. Doug, from RunSafe's side, what's unique about your approach to cyber resilience and why does it resonate so strongly in the defense context?
So we started with an economics focus on the question of defending systems. Our adversaries have cyber weapons that are cheap to produce and use repeatedly. Traditionally, defenders have had to respond to those cheap cyber weapons with large investments and try to play catch up, at a time of the adversary's choosing. So RunSafe's focus is on making the cheap thing hard for the attacker, depriving them of the reliable, scalable methods while letting defenders cover off a whole front in the cyber warfare with zero human effort. And this is germane in the defense context because, as we've seen in the last 3, 4 years of conflict, cyber is a hot war. Cyber is a part of a hot war. And cyber is often a precursor to a hot war. Cyber activity presages it. So it's important that our weapons infrastructure, that our defense systems are able to, perform in conflict situations under cyber duress. And so being able to make a system more resilient without having to rewrite things is a fundamental economics proposition that we focus on.
Okay. Stefan, can you tell us a little bit more about your approach to cyber resilience at eForce?
So yes, so the cyber resilience for us have two main challenge. One is related to the corporate resilience because so eForce is a subsidiary inside the Think and Tears group, and we need to maintain and governance the corporate resilience. The other challenge is the product resilience. So Fincantieri is biggest shipbuilder around the world, and with the new regulation in the maritime, we need to guarantee the resilience on board. This is really so challenging because we have two main market. One is the Navy, and so you need to guarantee the resilience in a cyber warfare point of view. But the other is in the cruise. You need to so provide the resilience in a ship with a thousand of people on board. So this for us is the real challenge. So obviously we are focused on the business for the enterprise because the resilience help to deliver our product, and also we are focused on the availability and integrity in the product point of view to permit to also the safety, the people safety in case of attack in a ship.
Okay. Well, that's a powerful foundation. So let's dig deeper into the realities shaping cyber risk in the defense sector today. The cyber threat environment for defense has been evolving significantly. AI powered attacks, zero-day exploitation, and hybrid warfare tactics are all escalating. Jose, the defense sector is undergoing an intense digital transformation while facing increasingly sophisticated cyber threats. From your perspective, what are the main forces reshaping how defense organizations approach cybersecurity today?
To start answering, I think I like a quote that I believe was in the World Economic Forum Cybersecurity Outlook report from this year that stated something like, the cyber security landscape is shifting from complicated to complex, meaning unpredictable, interconnected, and harder to control. I think there are a number of things that support this. Cybersecurity is no longer a support function in this digital dominated defense context. So it's currently across many nations a core pillar of national security. The threat landscape is also changing structurally. So bad actors are more persistent, more well-resourced, doing multiple domain campaigns. Cyber is integrated in electronic warfare, strikes, drone ops. So it's more and more a strategic domain and not just an IT or technical issue. This World Economic Forum Cybersecurity Outlook report also mentions the fact that geopolitical tensions influence currently, based on the survey, 60% of cyber strategy, which is a force that is shaping the current landscape. It also points out the proliferation I mentioned before of regulatory requirements that significantly add burden in terms of compliance. We believe compliance is essential, no doubt, but it doesn't mean resilience. This survey shows that while 78% of organizations believe that these regulations, cyber regulations, help reduce risk, 69% find it overly complex and fragmented across globally, basically. And while larger organizations are usually more capable of handling this compliance burden, the risk here is the fact that a lot of SMEs really struggle to deal with this type of regulatory requirements. And we know that supply chain today has a lot of importance, and a lot of companies depend on smaller entities that deal with these compliance regulations. Another force, clearly speed and automation. So AI is everywhere. So AI is being used to analyze target environments, adapt payloads, fast defense in real time. So this is being used by bad actors. So systems must operate and respond at machine speed and not really at certification compliance speed. The implication of all of this, I believe in this defense context, is that there's a need to move the mindset from a more perimeter-based static model to a more adaptive intelligence-led resilience. So including things like continuous verifications, live runtime integrity checks, behavioral monitoring, and engineering-driven, engineering-embedded assurance.
Okay. Doug, how's the nature of cyber attacks evolving? And how can runtime protection or hardening technology change the defensive posture?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what a lot of said about attacks moving at at the speed of AI, and exploits are being developed at the speed of AI. And with less human effort, pushing down the cost for the attacker, the AI exploit development pipelines are actually quite mature. They have automated built-in test stages. So, eliminating more barriers in the journey from the discovery of a 0-day to potential exploit to reliable cyber weapon. So, defenders need something that gives them scale on an equivalent sort of order of magnitude. So, defenders need technology-based approaches that give them, 1,000x or 10,000 or 100,000x mechanical advantage. So every human hour needs to cover what otherwise would have been 10,000 or 100,000 human hours. So runtime protections give defenders the ability to transition from one human hour helped secure 1,000 lines of code to one human hour secured 1,000 megabytes of compiled code or more. And, if we don't allow defenders weapons with that kind of breadth or speed, then we're not going to get out of playing defense. And you know, and I agree with, you know, many of the challenges that should say mentioned about regulation, but we have seen some forward-leaning, some insightful attempts at regulation, particularly in the U.S. defense acquisition space, regarding the acceleration of getting capability downrange, and even the inclusion of active cyber defense requirements in new legislation regarding weapon system cybersecurity. So, you know, the attacks are evolving, and policy is trying to keep up, but it's a tough space.
Okay. Stefano, how are these evolving threats impacting your operational or supply chain security strategies?
So the new threats, as I introduced before, has two impacts. One is in the market, and the other in the enterprise. So with this dual approach, we tried to find a common way to address the new threats. Obviously, in our case, we have probably sometimes the same actor that try to attack us. And in this scenario, we define a 4-5 main area where we began a deep strategy to change our approach. What I mean, so we decide to use not only the technology to address the new threat, but to increase the activity of awareness, because the awareness is one of the big accelerator in a technology point of view, because the technology block you, but if you don't aware the user, it's really hard to let me say block everything. You need awareness, a strong awareness inside the company, and also in the production area. The other point is related to the policy. We work to simplify. For us, it's important to simplify the policy. So the policy should be clear and simple, not thousands of pages. You don't do this, you can do this, and so it's like a quick guideline to address the good behavior in the employees' point of view. Obviously, the threat change really rapidly. It's very hard to us to stay aligned. For this reason, we increase our cyber threat intelligence team approach, and began to invest in the research. So the other colleagues spoken about AI. So the AI for us is an accelerator to permit us to speed up the reaction. So otherwise, today is really impossible to wait the time that the expert reskill and be ready to protect or respond an incident of new threat. You need to have an accelerator, and the AI for us is an accelerator. So this is our approach. Obviously, also in a big company and a big supplier, so we need to securize or to help our supply chain. Today is so let me say huge challenge, because I don't know the colleagues, but in our scenario we have thousands of suppliers, and with different dimension. So you have a small engineering company with 5, 10 people, or you have the big four. So obviously with big four, it's easy to maintain the cybersecurity. In case of a small company, we are working to find the best approach. But so today I don't have the solution about so securize the supply chain.
Okay. Well, this brings us naturally to the question of regulation, because compliance is increasingly intertwined with security. Governments are stepping in with frameworks like the EU Cyber Resilience Act and the US Department of Defense CMMC, reshaping how defense suppliers operate. Jose, how do you see these frameworks influencing the way defense organizations and suppliers approach cybersecurity? And are we seeing convergence or divergence between the US and the EU?
So before going into that, I actually just picking up on what Stefan was mentioning about the small suppliers having to comply with these regulations. I think really this is something that is a concern for me, because again, compliance and regulations in cyber and across all industries was always a driver for investment in security, and I think it's good, and I think we all like that we have more regulation in cybersecurity. It helps evolve the markets, the posture of the companies. But the risky thing here is for smaller companies, especially, they have these compliance requirements. They need to produce evidence, and then we have the risk that they are deviating investment and resources for compliance that otherwise could be actually on actual good security practices and good security measures. So it's good. It also has its cons. Looking at the framework context, so we have frameworks, again, it's fragmented, EU, US, in EU, the CRA, the Cyber Resilience Acts, the NIS2 on the US, CMMC impacts the defense context. So they are, I think, ultimately, I believe there's some convergence in what type of behaviors these regulations and frameworks want to motivate and influence. NIS2 and CMMC are more organization focused. CRA is more product oriented, right? So CRA in Cybersecurity Act in the EU imposes requirements for products to be marketed and have market access in the EU, including things like ensuring that products were developed with security by design, there's proper vulnerability management process in place, the ability to have reporting on exploited vulnerabilities, have SBOM-like transparency and overall secure development practices. There's actually for CRA exemption for defense, so for purely military use, but knowing that defense systems, we have multiple commercial components, open source libraries. Also, there's the dual use components or dual use systems. These are impacted by CRA. CMMC, Doug probably even knows more about CMMC. I can talk more about it, but clearly impacts all companies in the US defense industrial base. So it's a requirement to have a contract and work with the DoD. It's interesting that it's good that it's based on clear, well-known standards from NIST. And actually, when I think about US-EU, it's closer, in my view, to NIS2 rather than CRA. So, but in the end, what I was saying, they look different on paper. They push suppliers towards the same healthy security behaviors.
Okay. Stefano, as a global defense supplier, how do you handle the complexity of meeting CMMC and CRA requirements simultaneously?
So the main pain for us is as Jose said, they are too good and so aligned regulation, and so they can help a big enterprise to increase the cybersecurity point of view. But sometimes we have a limitation, so a constraint by regulation. For example, in a worldwide company, if you have service or cybersecurity activities provided by European area, you can't provide the same service internally, but because CMMC, so in case of CUI data, can't permit for example, Italian or European citizen to access to several type of data. And in this type of data, there are also vulnerability, CM log, and so on. So, and is a big challenge for us to maintain the governance around the world, and in the meantime manage the specific regulation. So this is a really tricky challenge for us.
Okay. Doug, do you see these regulations as a burden or as a catalyst for innovation and better security practices?
Well, I'm gonna try and pass up on the bait that Jose offered regarding CMMC, and say only that depending on who you ask in the U.S., CMMC is a 4-letter word, and so we'll try and move on. But I'm a neophyte with respect to policy, so there's a lot that I'm not qualified to render opinions on, but I'll say that sometimes it's easy to forget, for us, particularly us as a cyber technology provider, that it's easy to forget that the economy doesn't exist to support the cyber industry. The cyber industry exists to support, a facile, growing, fast-paced economy that can transact, in high volumes with confidence. And so I think there are some well-structured regulations that are coming out that, yes, there is a burden, but it's like, if you're a motorcycle rider, like if you do that and you've never worn a helmet, putting a helmet on, at first it feels like a burden, and there are some who swear they'll never do it. But once you pick a helmet, once you go through that process of picking a helmet, applying it's easy. And so those same regulations have compelled my colleagues and I in industry to make our esoteric, super technical, sciencey stuff as easy and as scalable for companies, and as accessible as for big companies and small companies. Make it as easy as putting on a helmet. And again, the genius of the internet was in TCP and IP, but they took over the world not because most people have learned what TCP IP is, but because they made it easy to use. So I'm seeing regulation is really pushing our industry to get more effective at meeting a higher bar easier, so that commerce can keep accelerating. And doing so requires technologies that allow, again, a single human's effort to have the scale and impact that previously would have taken 10,000 humans. And otherwise, the cyber protection needs of the growing fast-paced economy just can't be met.
Okay. Well, regulation alone doesn't ensure resilience. That depends on how organizations operationalize these requirements. We've heard a lot about software bills of materials, or SBOMs, and supply chain risk. In defense, this can be vital and sensitive. Jose, how does critical software help clients increase supply chain visibility and risk management?
Yeah, so regulation doesn't mean resilience, but it's actually good that some of the more recent frameworks actually put out there the importance of software bill of materials and managing this supply chain risk. Because currently supply chains are not linear, they are complex complex ecosystems of multiple subcontractors, a lot of components using open source libraries, custom firmware, sourcing from different jurisdictions, and also like long life cycles for certain components where suppliers disappear over time, right? Why is this important? I mentioned before that World Economic Forum Cybersecurity Outlook looks at supply chain risk as one of the most relevant risks and one of the most exploited vectors, with around 2/3 of the organizations that they looked at having some kind of supply chain attack last year. Again, the largest number, I would say, smaller organizations that have more difficult going after this type of requirements and security measures. So when we think about supply chain and this context, we cannot think about like as a point in time view audit, right? So cyber risks changes every day. We have new CVs, so new vulnerabilities every day, changing dependencies, libraries being abandoned, suppliers disappearing. So how we see it, we don't look at software bill of materials or SBOM as a starting point. So it's actually a starting point. I mean, it's not the finish line just to have a software bill of materials. So software, it tells you what you have, what your software has, which components you have, and we help answer what does that mean. So how risky it is, what does it mean from a risk perspective, and what you need to do now that you have that. So we actually help with as part of our engineering practices with SBOM generation, SBOM validation, enriching it from a vulnerability risk perspective, licensing risk perspective, its provenance, and then the whole life cycle tracking and management across updates and releases. So the way we like to see it from an engineering perspective, so that is that we turn assurance from a reactive perspective, reactive audits, point-in-time view into a proactive engineering discipline, giving a continuously updated view of what we have, what we rely on in terms of third-party dependencies, and how secure we really are based on that.
Okay. Doug, how does automated hardening or runtime protection strengthen supply chain trust, especially when code comes from several different tiers?
Yeah, so I think Jose, alluded to this. You've got open source, you've got lots of software coming from so many different places, and it's the first thing an attacker needs um, is insight into the software in your environment. And so open source is great because it allows you to build a crypto library, with just a right click. But the bad news is that because you use that crypto library, now because everybody has access to that crypto library, you've given your attacker a roadmap to how to compromise you. And so that what you are able to do with automated hardening is get the benefit of the shared building blocks that everybody has access to, but how that shared building block operates in your environment will be completely different, well, functionally identical, behaviorally identical, but aspects of its memory and aspects of its internals will be completely different in a way that prevent an attacker who has an exploit um, from being able to target in your infrastructure. So again, you're able to move at the speed of feature development and without having to worry about the challenges of upstreaming bug fixes and things like that. You're able to have confidence using that open source thing that would have otherwise been a roadmap to compromise. You're able to use it with confidence. So that's something that our customers have really enjoyed.
Okay. Stefano, what are your biggest challenges in enforcing cybersecurity requirements across complex multi-tier supplier ecosystems?
So the main challenge is to know the real posture, the real cybersecurity posture of the suppliers. So because today it's possible to add requirements inside the contract, or we can use a lot of risk tools. But so this is we can say the shallow of the problem, because probably in the requirements the suppliers can say, okay, I'm agree with all the requirements, or in a questionnaire can answer so the result of a questionnaire, it could be a high result, so close to 100%, or otherwise the risk tool can provide high response or no response, because we said also, Joseph, previously, so sometimes we work with very small supplier that use, for example, Google domain. So they use a mail with Google domain, or use a service without our own domain. In this case, the surface is like zero, no exposure in a tool. And so the real problem is to use all this information and understand the real cybersecurity posture. Sometimes, so today, always probably, you know the real posture only when you are in a post-mortem activities, because everything is green in a point of view of compliance, or you receive several communication that the company is cyber secure and so on. But at the end, sometimes you are working with the supplier to analyze a post-mortem scenario. So this is our biggest challenge.
Okay. All of this points to a common goal, which is achieving resilience that endures even under attack. Cyber resilience is no longer just about prevention, it's about endurance and recovery. Jose, what does resilience by design mean in practice for defense systems with long life cycles and limited patching opportunities?
So definitely, traditionally, cybersecurity has been mostly about stopping intrusions, about defending the perimeter, right? But in defense, where these platforms, we need to have platforms and systems that operate in a very challenging, contested, unpredictable environment. Resilience means having the ability to continue functioning under distress, and even after something goes wrong. Also, in this for this type of systems, patching can be very complicated, slow, or risky, or even impossible. So we, as an engineering company, and with our goal and mission to embed security in engineering, we see and look at architecture as a defense, and resilience must be a property of the whole architecture, not just like a specific control. So this includes, among many things, that architectures need to have to be identity driven, or ensure identity driven access between components. Need to have protected control paths for mission critical functions, integrity protections at boot time and at boot and runtime, proper isolation boundaries to stop lateral spread. So this should all be part of a strong architecture that is part of that guarantees the resilience of the system. And cyber resilience should also be about providing continuous trust to the users, to the operators that must trust the system even when degraded, and trust within the platform itself through continuous verification of components, configurations, and behaviors. So resilience by design is not really just about preventing cyber incidents or every cyber event. It's about maintaining capability, maintaining control, maintaining trusts, even when the external environment is under constant attack.
Okay. Stefano, how are you rethinking architecture or operation to maintain continuity under cyber stress or contested conditions?
So, a quick answer is we're thinking daily. So, because we can't only rethink one time. So, for example, in the past, the cybersecurity infrastructure spent a lot of time to define new architecture, and they put in place like building blocks the architecture to protect the company. Today, the scenario completely changed. So what I mean with this, so the business changing day by day, because for example, AI doesn't only support the cybersecurity, but also support the business, and the business so let me say wants to grow and use AI. This means that in few months the cybersecurity scenario changed, because you move from the seller that work only with ERP, and the seller that move the file from ERP to public AI, for example. So, and the cybersecurity need to review and rethinking quickly the approach to the securize the, let me say, crew jewels inside the company. And the other scenario that change is also geopolitical ecosystem. In the last years, the geopolitical system changed completely, and also, for example, in our scenario, the business changed completely, and we remodulate, for example, the shipyard usage, and this means that we rethinking again our architecture. So the real answer is that today we need to rethinking day by day our approach to maintain the resilience, and in the meantime we need to use technology that help us to change rapidly. So this is our approach.
Okay. So let's take a look at the bigger picture. What's next for cybersecurity in the defense sector? And looking ahead, what trends do you see in defining the next 5 years in defense cybersecurity, with an eye towards things like AI-driven defense and adversarial AI, post-quantum cryptography readiness, continuous exposure management and zero trust operations, and the role of trusted partnerships across the defense ecosystem? Jose, how do you see critical software's role evolving in these as these dynamics accelerate?
So those are definitely important trends. Our goal is to be at the forefront of those and research those. And a first one, obviously AI. So AI is a strategic asset. It enables faster, from a cyber perspective, it enables faster detection, helps in terms of decision support, increasing autonomy. On the other side of the sword, it's also relevant from the attack surface for adversarial AI model poisoning. Our role there, so again, we are investing a lot in AI research and AI security, helping our clients adopt AI responsibly, embedding guardrails, protecting models, ensuring predictable behavior. Another one of the trends you mentioned that where we are working is on post-quantum crypto. So it's not theoretical risk for long life platforms like defense systems. And we have experience and already did, since there are already quantum resistant algorithms. We are embedding quantum safe cryptography into critical communications, key exchange, identities, and helping our clients with migration paths to avoid like emergency retrofits when an incident occurs. And finally, I also believe that a relevant trend is the focus on continuous verification and continuous risk. It's not like a new thing, but it's still important for a lot of companies that still have an approach of point-in-time accreditation and not looking at security anymore. So so this point-in-time approach is no longer enough. So the pace of change is very fast. So we have a lot of fast software change, global supply chain. So we need a more dynamic posture. And so we focus on trying to use and implement tools and processes that help with continuously assessing cyber exposure, validating integrity, validating compliance, detecting deviations early. Right? So ultimately, our goal is really to stay ahead in terms of AI, post-quantum, exposure management, and build that as part of our engineering foundations.
Okay. Jose, if I could follow that quickly, you mentioned post-quantum cybersecurity and cryptography, and we've all in the last few years seen the horror story type predictions about mature quantum computing is going to be the end of cryptography. It's going to be the end of effective cybersecurity. How do you see the threat posed by quantum computing evolving, and are there specific instances of how the cybersecurity community is making plans to adapt to quantum computing?
I see it as a threat, definitely, over time, especially for systems that have a long life. I see that the market, there are a lot of new solutions and products coming up to deal with this particular risk. I believe that it's important that for critical systems, for systems with critical communications, that we start early and we start adapting systems and start replacing or having these migration paths to adapt to these quantum resistance protocols and algorithms.
Okay. Doug, how do you see RunSafe shaping the resilience frontier? To our clients, how do you see defense industry collaborating, changing as threats evolve?
Well, I think one thing that's not going to change in the coming years is the audacity of the attacker, and I think attackers are going to get more brazen, and I think that the last decade or two has shown that audacity of the attack and the creativity of the attack is one of the defender's blind spots, but b there haven't been proper penalties over the long run, so it's worked. They've gotten away with it, and if you've only played defense, you're one of the challenges that I think is understanding that the attacker is resourceful, creative, persistent, and gets to pick the time of the attack. And so this is a set of things that isn't going to change. And why this is germane, I think, is if you look at each one of the trends that's going to evolve over the coming years that you mentioned, and I'll just quantum computing, not just limited to quantum cryptography, but also AI. I think the ways that these are going to continue to disrupt are going to blow our brains. The application of quantum computing to more aspects of the cybersecurity space are going to be, challenging. And so, in terms of, understanding models and architectures. And so what I think is essential is, again, that people figure out how to protect an entire, take an entire front, and put it to bed. Take it entire classes of risk and really focus on those set of questions and get out of you know small brush fires, because the fronts are so large, and if you try and take on brush fires one at a time, it's not going to work. And so, and when I also think about quantum cryptography, you can have the best lattice based structure for quantum key creation and encryption algorithms. But if the underlying software that was written isn't secure, the attacker doesn't need to attack lattice-based cryptography. They're simply going to attack the algorithm. They're going to attack the software, and they're going to out of band decrypt decrypt whatever they want, regardless of how sophisticated the crypto is. So I think, and that's a type of audacity that doesn't play by the rules, but that's exactly what attackers are going to do. So I think keeping those kind of things in mind, I think is going to be essential.
Okay, Stefano, what do you see as your role and the role of E4s in helping move cybersecurity forward and deal with some of these overarching trends?
So our role is to work to drive our customer and the company to understand better the new challenge, and also to simplify the new challenge. So, for example, in an enterprise point of view, if we speak about post-quantum cryptography, obviously we need to have a big relationship with the main technology vendor. So, for example, in the future, will not the company that implement also or build the anti post-quantum computer cryptography, but will be a relationship with, for example, Microsoft that will provide an IIS with post-quantum cryptography enable. So and also when we said before by the colleagues, so we also need to have a big relationship with the supply chain, in this case with software and vendor supply chain, because if you can't attack the cryptography algorithm, probably we will see an escalation in the supply chain attack to try to disrupt the software chain. So the cybersecurity will be an enabler, so an helper to the company to reach this new era, we can say. In a market point of view, probably we need to help to simplify. So in this day, we have several exchange with the critical guys, and so we said that we are working in a solution. We have a solution to simplify the cybersecurity monitor on board in the ship, because the ship is so the people inside the ship are a crew, are sailor, not a cybersecurity expert, and we need to simplify. So let me say this link. When you drive your car, you have a red or yellow light. So your engine, you have a red light, but you don't understand what is the issue in your engine. You can have a small manual that say turn off the engine and call someone to help you. So because you are not an expert in the modern car era, and the same is for the cybersecurity. So the experts are few, and we need to help the customer, and so let me say in this case the people around us, to simplify when there is a risk, when there is an incident, to have the feeling and the best approach to stop the attack chain. So these are the two main challenge for us.
Okay, well, we've got a question from our online audience, and the first question is, how can smaller organizations build resilience without large budgets? Jose, what do you think?
It's a challenge, but I would say here the key premise is using a risk-based approach, not just like a standard checklist or creating policies and documents just for the sake of creating them because it's in the regulation. Adopt really a risk-based approach, understand where the big risks lie for the context of the organization, and invest in proper security measures to address those risks, and then be transparent about them. That would, I would say, create trust with your stakeholders.
Okay, Doug, what do you think? The question has to do with how can smaller organizations build resilience without large budgets?
Yeah, so I think, pardon me, I think that's actually something that's been fantastic about the technology development in the cybersecurity space over the last several years. I think there are, things that are making it so that solutions that previously would have taken entire security teams to be able to implement are now something that can be just added into a build process with zero human effort. And so, security solutions that would challenge, sophisticated nation state attackers become something that is easy to right click and build in. And so those kind of things. Now, I completely agree with Jose's point that you got to do a risk based approach. But if, for device manufacturers, or, if you're looking at devices and contemplating that part of your risk is, how they're going to get hacked, then, looking at things that are active on device solutions that don't require PhDs from, cyber Hogwarts to be able to implement. These are accessible.
Okay, Stefano, the question is, how can smaller organizations build resilience without large budgets? What do you think?
So I'm completely agree with the colleagues. So the company needs to focus. We can say risk-based, probably yes, but especially in a business point of view, because you need to know what are the critical business area that you need to protect, and the business file that you need to protect. Obviously, you can't avoid to protect the other area, but you need to focus on these areas to manage at the best the budget. Obviously, also you can work with a solution, technical solution that are so tailored for small company, and a mix of these two elements, and so the awareness. When I say awareness, is also in a cybersecurity point of view, because sometimes in a small company, the cybersecurity ownership is in charge to IT, probably, or quality. So sometimes it's possible that the company in the company is not present a cybersecurity expert, and for this reason, also the people need to grow and reskill the people.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot. We have more questions in the queue, but we're right a little past the top of the hour. So we've covered a lot, from threat evolution to regulation and resilience. I'd like to ask the panel, what's one practical takeaway for organizations seeking to strengthen their cyber resilience today? Jose, what do you think?
What we as an engineering company would say, so engineer security, build transparency from day one, manage SBOMs properly, proper risk management, use secure architectures. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Doug, what do you think?
I'd say, protect, like look for solutions that get in the device at runtime and help, get that scalable defense out there on each device quickly, easily, and without slowing developers down.
Okay, Stefano, what's one practical takeaway?
So by my point of view, is simplicity, as we said, and view the cybersecurity with the business aid. So that these two to take away.
All right. Okay, well, on behalf of Military and Aerospace Electronics and Endeavor Business Media, I'd like to thank today's presenters, Jose Costa, Chief Information Security Officer at Critical Software, Doug Britton, Chief Strategy Officer and Director at RunSafe Security, and Stefano Landucci, Head of Cybersecurity Engineering, Architecture, and Transformation at eForce. So thanks for coming. I'm John Keller, Chief Editor of Military and Aerospace Electronics.